All right, let's just jump right in, because what we're talking about today is, well, it's huge. Something absolutely epic is unfolding on our planet as we speak. We're talking about a geological event so massive, it's literally going to redraw the map of the world.
Yep, you heard that right. Africa, the second biggest continent on the entire planet, is, well, it's splitting in two. It's happening slowly, for sure, but it is unstoppable. And what's so incredible is that we, you and me, are getting to witness the very first stages of this continental breakup.
So that leads to the big question, right? How on earth does a continent just split apart? And how does that give birth to a brand new ocean? Well, that's exactly what we're going to get into.
Okay, so to get our heads around this, our story doesn't start millions of years ago. No, it starts with something that happened pretty recently. A single, really dramatic event that suddenly brought this massive planetary process into the spotlight for everyone to see. I mean, just try to imagine this. You're going about your day, and then the ground just opens up. A huge crack, miles long, just appears out of nowhere. This sounds like a disaster movie, but it's not. This actually happened in southwestern Kenya, and man, was it a wake-up call.
And the immediate results, total chaos. A major highway, the Nairobi-Nark Road, literally collapsed right into this new chasm. But here's the thing. Scientists looked at this and knew this wasn't just some random sinkhole. This was a clue, a symptom of something way, way bigger happening under the surface.
So to really understand what's going on, we got to zoom out. Let's pull back from that one crack in Kenya and look at the absolutely colossal system that it belongs to.
See that crack? It's just one tiny little thread in a massive tapestry called the East African Rift System. We're talking about a sprawling network of valleys and faults that stretches for an incredible 3,000 kilometers. To put that in perspective for you, that's roughly the distance from New York City all the way to Denver. It's huge.
So think of this as a kind of continental divorce. You've got two main players here. Most of Africa, the big chunk, is on what geologists call the Nubian Plate. But this smaller section, which includes places like Somalia and parts of Ethiopia, is on the Somali Plate. And the key thing here, they are pulling away from each other.
Okay, so how does something that massive, an entire tectonic plate, actually move? That's a great question. To get it, we need to do a super quick dive into the basic mechanics of how our planet is put together.
It all comes down to something called the lithosphere. The easiest way to think about it is like the cracked shell of an egg. That's kind of like the Earth's rigid outer layer. And it's not one solid piece. It's broken up into these huge chunks we call tectonic plates. And here's the kicker. They're not just sitting still. They're constantly drifting around, floating on a hotter, gooey layer of mantle right underneath.
So this whole rifting process kicks off with these incredible forces coming from deep inside the Earth. Imagine a giant plume of super hot rock, kind of like a massive blowtorch from the planet's core, pushing up against the underside of that lithosphere. This pressure stretches it, and just like when you pull a piece of taffy, it gets thinner and weaker in the middle. And eventually, it breaks. The crust ruptures and the land in between sinks down, creating what's called a rift valley. And that is exactly what's happening right now in East Africa.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. A whole continent splitting apart? It sounds like something out of science fiction. But the crazy part is, this exact process has happened over and over again. In fact, it's the very reason the map of the world looks the way it does.
It's honestly one of the coolest and most elegant ideas in all of science. You've probably done this yourself, right? You look at a world map and you see how the bulge of South America seems to fit perfectly into the curve of Africa, like a jigsaw puzzle piece. Well, that's because it once did. You're literally seeing the ghost of an ancient world.
And the evidence for this is it's overwhelming. It's not just that jigsaw puzzle fit. Scientists started finding identical fossils of ancient plants, like this one called Glossopteris, on continents that are now thousands of miles apart, separated by oceans. How's that possible? And then they found mountain ranges and rock layers that just stop at the coast of one continent and pick up again perfectly matching on another. There used to be one single epic mountain range.
So, here's the main takeaway. The breakup of that one giant supercontinent, Pangaea, is what created the very oceans and continents we have today. The Atlantic Ocean? It was born from the exact same kind of rifting we're watching in Africa right now. It's like history is literally repeating itself right before our eyes.
Okay, so if history is our guide, what does this tell us about the future? Well, using what we learned from Pangaea's breakup, scientists can actually make some pretty solid predictions about what's next for Africa.
First off, this split isn't happening uniformly. It's not all pulling apart at the same rate. Down in the southern part of the rift, the process is still pretty young and slow. But if you go north, to Ethiopia's Afar region, it's a completely different story. There, the process is way more advanced. The crust has been stretched so thin it's almost at its breaking point. The whole area is just covered in volcanic rock. The Afar region is like a crystal ball. It's showing us the future of the entire rift system.
Fast forward, say, 10 million years. As the plates keep drifting apart, the land in that rift valley will eventually sink below sea level. And when that happens, water from the Indian Ocean is going to rush in, flooding the valley and creating a brand new narrow sea. Over more time, that sea will get wider and wider until it becomes a full-blown ocean. What's left will be a smaller African mainland and a giant new island continent floating in the Indian Ocean, made up of parts of Ethiopia, Somalia, and other countries.
And look, this isn't just some far-off theory or computer model. This is happening now. And scientists are right there, on the ground, in some of the harshest environments you can imagine, watching it all unfold in real time.
I mean, thanks to amazing tech like super precise GPS, we're way past the guessing game. As geophysicist Ken McDonald points out, they can now measure the rate of plate motion down to a few millimeters a year. Think about that. We can literally watch the continent stretching year by year with that level of accuracy.
And getting this data is tough. This work is done in some really brittle conditions. The Afar region, which is the perfect natural lab for studying this stuff, has a nickname, Dante's Inferno. And for good reason. It's one of the hottest places on Earth where people actually live, with daytime temps that can soar past 54 degrees Celsius. That's over 130 degrees Fahrenheit.
So yeah, the overall process is slow. We're talking about the same speed your fingernails grow. But, and this is a big but, it's not always a smooth ride. It can be punctuated by these bursts of incredible, violent activity. Get this. Back in 2005, a crack more than 35 miles long ripped open in the Ethiopian desert. In just a few days, that single event released the same amount of energy as several hundred years of normal, slow plate movement. Just, bam, all at once. It's just such a powerful reminder, isn't it? That we live on a planet that is constantly moving, constantly changing. That solid ground we stand on, it's not nearly as solid as we think. It really leaves you with this one big thought. What happens when a planet decides to redraw its own map? We're just here for the ride on a world that is always remaking itself.